Gaming and BS episode 198 coming to you Wednesday, the birthday of America. Welcome to Gaming and BS. We're a podcast. Your host, Sean.
I'm Brett, the one who apparently remembers what it is we do every week. Hey, Sean. How you doing?
Doing fantastic, Brett.
How's that car doing for you? A little vehicle trouble? Got a little vehicle trouble?
My wife's car is a piece of shit. And
I hate cars.
they really are a big inconvenience when they don't work properly. Well, whose car do we borrow to get to work, and how do we get to work? And you start at like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I start at ass crack of dawn.
Yuck.
We had a mechanic that didn't fix it right the first time. And
those are good. That's always fun.
They haven't called us about a part that should be ordered. Weird. I said they don't want to work. They don't want to work on it.
So I had in a similar bout of frustration. I had some, not even like crazy high winds. So I had a brand new privacy fence put up in my backyard.
Ooh.
And some wind came through and like popped part of it off.
Oh, no.
And like it's about 24 feet of it is just bent. 4x4 posts are twisted over and stuff. And I lose my fucking mind. I'm like, this fence isn't even 48 hours old. What the fuck? The winds were not that strong. What the hell? I'm ready for blood and whatever. And my lovely wife is not here to make it so that I don't want to murder people.
Right.
Which is why I have Susan around, because she stops me from losing my mind.
Yes.
So she calms me down enough over text. She's like, look, if you call the nice contractor man and scream at him, he probably will not be too willing to come over and help. So We've actually used him before. He's a nice guy. I just, like I said, in the middle of the night in a rainstorm, like, really? My fence fell over? That's just what I fucking wanted. So he's coming out tomorrow. We'll get her fixed. It'll work. It'll work. I know he'll do good work. So it'll be all right.
First world problems.
Exactly. I'm worried about this. There's literally people, with not having food and stuff. But anyway, yeah. Wow, we just depressed ourselves. All right, let's move on. Let's do something fun.
Yeah.
Oh, announcements. GameholeCon events are open. EverCon event submission is open. Avalon Kickstarter writing. I have completed my round of it today, July 1st. I slid in 11th hour and got it done and passed it to Mr. Sneezak for the next round of fun with the Encoded Design crew. So, I am feeling very confident. It was a bit of a, not a slog. Slog's the wrong word. It was a trial in a way because I had not written anything quite like this before, so it was really different. I think after this is all said and done through the whole process, it might be worth a bonus BS episode just to go through what I did, how I did it, and what things I thought like, that can't be that hard, that caused me to bang my head on my desk for hours on end because I couldn't figure it out. So we'll log that one in there. Oh, and speaking of things I did not get done this weekend, between screaming about my fence and working my Avalon stuff, I did not get the Invisible Sun Black Cube video done yet, so that is coming. Just have not completed it. That's on its way.
Excellent.
You got anything else, man?
Nope, but I am going to get underway a campaign.
Yeah? What you got?
Tomb of Annihilation.
Okay.
Yep, I'm going to run my group that I grew up with through it.
Like, when you say grew up with, you talking like high school guys or what?
Yeah.
Wow.
Middle school, high school guys. Yeah, we'd known each other for a while, and we'd used to game, and then it would, there'd be years that would go by, and then we'd game again, and then, it'd fall apart. And now they got the passion to get together and do it, and I said, all right, well, I'll run it if you guys could figure out. It's probably going to be like a one day a month kind of thing.
I'll tell you, as I've gotten older, well, with my home group being like 3 hours away, it became easier for us to do once a month just because it's a long haul for me to drive all the way up there and hang out for the weekend. But we turned it into a weekend thing. So going to once a month for us as grown-ass adults with busy lives and many things to do. Once a month became easier to pull off from a distance perspective when we want to see each other face-to-face than it was trying to do it every week or even every other week. Just the once a month became easier to schedule. So I hope that works out for you, man.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be no problem.
I can't possibly see anybody flaking out at you at the last second. That wouldn't happen. Gamers never do that. Oh, Lord. Well, you have to listen to how it goes. Because if nothing else, I know nothing about the Tomb of Annihilation other than my first thought was, is that some kind of Tomb of Horrors redo ripoff-y thing? I have no idea anything about it. I've not read jack about it, so we'll have to talk about that sometime.
Yeah.
You ready? Shall we random encounter?
Yeah, let's get into random encounter.
Let's do it. You want to start? I'll let you start. I blabbled through all the announcements. I'll let you start, Sean. Let your dulcet tones lull our listeners.
All right. Corey Wynn emails us on episode 197, Con Game versus Campaign. Hello, fine gents of BS material. Just a couple of comments on the whole Con Game versus Campaign and all that. First of all, I think you are overlooking a key component of convention games. Most of the time, if not always, you are paying to attend the con and its games. If you are shelling out hard-earned cash to attend, I think the general expectation is to have a good time. Your money's worth, so to speak. Also, the more one attends conventions, they might latch onto certain DM/GMs they know. Others might even be trying out new systems, and a fun time in said system might be a tipping point to buy that game. In your home group, I highly doubt your players are paying you to play and expect you to deliver a good time. I might be wrong, but I think your players show up because they like you and like playing.
You know, maybe that's a problem. Maybe we should charge people. If I charge these assholes,
obviously
they bring their A game if I charged them. That's what I'm hearing Corey say.
I think Corey's onto something there.
He might be.
I'm running my home game the wrong way.
Exactly. Tickets for admission. That's
right.
The point. All right. Okay.
When I fire it up on July 14th, sounds like my buddies need to chip in a few shekels.
I'll get a PayPal invoice. Wait, what? What's this? What's this thing?
Thanks, Corey.
$4 an hour. What? That's crazy.
That's Corey Wynn of Northern Wisconsin. Email address is...
Oh, nice.
What I've taken from con games is the excitement and cool things I see other DMs, GMs do and try to incorporate those elements into my home games as I evolve as a game master. I love it when I hear from my players that they had a great time and can't wait for the next session. Since we only play about once a month, that might be easier to inject than that con excitement versus if you are playing weekly and have to generate content quickly. Since I started attending cons, it's a great time to catch up with friends I don't see too often and game with them, as well as try new systems or game with a game designer. In many cases, the game master is only as good as the player feedback is. In our consumer society, everyone might be quick to write up a review or post on social media about the games they participate in, so I try to make it enjoyable. I stick to the same rules in my home campaign as I do a con game when I run. A player can try anything, and I'll adjudicate as necessary, not shut down. Speaking of con games, I have a couple up for Gamehole under the ye old Gaming and BS banner, and I'm getting some ready for EverCon. Looking forward to them both. Corey, Man of War, Win.
Those are good points, Corey. And I think, I hadn't honestly thought, jokes aside about the spending component, right? So you dump a few shekels to get in to the con, $50 to $100, whatever it is to get in your gaming convention. You get into it, and you're there. I could definitely see wanting to throw a little more oomph into the game that you paid money for, right? It's your vacation time. You're really going to go out and have a good time. You're there specifically to have fun. And sometimes when you, maybe we do need to charge our players, but when you're playing with a regular group, it can be easy to have the real life thing kind of get in the way, right? When we go to a gaming convention, I think sometimes it might be easier when that con door shuts behind you, you forget about work, the kids being crazy, the dog puked on the carpet, whatever. It's easier to stay in that zone and really put it all in. So good points, man. That's good stuff. And as always, Corey, thank you so much for running games for us. That's really, really cool.
Yes, thank you for opting to mention us in your game as a part of our production, I guess.
You ready? I'll do the next one?
Yeah, man.
All right. I'm going to murder the last name, Bichetta. Mike Bichetta. Emails us on Surrender or Run Away. Hey, guys, love the podcast. Always nice to for this expat to hear a couple of Wisconsin accents. He's originally from Appleton. Anyway, I'm DMing out of the Abyss module for D&D right now, and I was listening to your podcast. I could not stop thinking about the first 7 chapters of my current campaign. I was terrified to even run the campaign, knowing that my group has held its ground against primordial elementals, ancient dragons, and near omnipotent gods. And the campaign hinges on the players being captured, escaping from prison, all the hapless tropes you talked about. I, too, was worried about player agency, and the feeling that the campaign was on rails. My tactic thus far has been to give the players several options, but all of them horrifyingly deadly. That way, the campaign can still go the way I'm planning it to go, whether they stand and fight to the death or fall into an underground chasm running through the Underdark. After a number of sessions, I plan to loosen up the wheels on the train and let everything fly off the rails. But I think the process of being pushed, I think the process of being pushed around all through the Underdark will lead the players to appreciate their gear, levels, and abilities in a more sandboxy environment when they get strong enough to go back underground and punch evil in the face. I appreciate any thoughts, and have a brandy old fashioned on me, Mike. Mike actually had a brandy old fashioned just the other day. It was quite good.
I don't even know when the last time I ever had a brandy old fashioned.
Well, next time we'll go out, I'll buy you one.
Okay. Well,
you gotta have one.
I've had one, but
I know, but you need one. You need one to keep you current. That's what you gotta have. If not, you'll lose your visa, and we'll have to ship you out. That's what'll happen.
That is true. They'll boot me out of the state,
which is pretty much the same as getting booted out of the country. I mean, really, that's how it works.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, have you run? I do not know enough about the Abyss campaign. Do you know anything about that one? I understand that it has the prison aspect of it. I did not know. So I don't know enough about that campaign itself to give Mike any more comment or thought. Do you know anything more about Out of the Abyss?
I have it, but I haven't read it.
So you are less help than me. You have the potential. You have the potential to be helpful, but you shunned it by not reading your product. Way to go.
I could put this on pause and come back in a few hours.
That's okay.
Let's do that.
Yeah, we'll just pause it.
Nobody will ever know.
That's very true. That is very, very true. Yeah.
Yeah, the main topic is Out of the Abyss.
Oh, look at this. It's like we've just read it in 5 seconds. Right. So, Mike, I'll tell you what, though, man. I think knowing your group and the fear you have, it makes sense, right? And knowing them, saying, hey, they've stood their ground before, they fight ancient dragons, primordial elementals, they do all this heavy-duty shit, and they don't run away. They've never been captured, never gone for the prisoner component. I think you are right to be worried and to pay attention to that stuff. Right? When you think back to those times, you're like, man, I wonder if they surrender, I wonder if they would run away. It's probably worth it to, if you can, look back at notes if you've taken or whatever, just think about that encounter and say, wow, I tried that before. They wouldn't give it up. I tried that thing before. They still wouldn't run away. It's worth knowing that and possibly taking some kind of out-of-game cues to them saying, hey, kind of like what Sean and I talked about, like you might need to run away in order to survive this type of thing. So, interesting. I love the idea of all options being horrifyingly deadly, regardless of whether it's for capture or not. I just like the idea that all the players' options are horrifying and deadly. That makes me
At least you're giving them options and choices.
That's true.
So, I mean, that's...
You can player agent yourself right to death. That's what that is. I love it.
That's true, yeah.
All right, man, over to you, Sean.
Carl Davis emails us about prepping for con games. The conversations recently concerning getting your games ready for a variety of gaming cons stimulated some questions, and I would love to have you comment on. This might have been a little older. One thing I got to interrupt this email with is that there's folks that have submitted info through our website, and a lot of those, through that form, a lot of spam has come through.
Yeah, so, we had that problem for a while.
So I went back and I looked, and there was, and Chrissy had mentioned something, but it was like back in April or May, and so reading that now would be kind of out of context because she references even an older episode.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So for those of you that have sent us through that form, I apologize if we didn't get to it. I'm looking at it more diligently every week now. So having said that, hope we haven't turned you off from sending us messages through that method. Anyways,
No, that's a good point because we don't
want to ignore you.
No, we don't want to ignore you, and we're not trying to do the favorites thing like, oh, I really like Crim Fan, or oh, hey, I really like this other guy, or in this case, Carl Davis, who we're going to talk about here. Right. It has nothing to do with that. It's when we get hammered with spam, and it's Sean's job to comb through that stuff, and depending where you find it, and we've tried different methods to clean it up and stuff, and so anyway, mea culpa. We will get to it. And I'll tell you what, if we miss something, and you're like, no, seriously, I totally want this, send it back.
Yeah.
We'd love to pick it up. Even if it's older, that's totally cool.
Right.
Anyway, carry on, sir.
So carrying on, the conversations, recently concerning getting your games ready for a variety of gaming cons stimulated some questions that he wants us to comment on. What kind of prep do you do for your convention games? Do you do significant play testing or just pull the ideas together and see what happens? Do you run the same event multiple times over multiple cons to get better each time? Are you big into props or handouts that add some immersion to the game? Do you spend significant time on developing descriptions? Do you spend time identifying additional encounters or shortcuts for too fast and too slow groups? Fundamentally, what do you think leads to your best events? All right. I haven't run games in a few years at cons and want to get back into the swing. I don't want to dust off the old well-tested, well-worn events I ran at Gen Con many years ago. Many questions I would love your 2 copper pieces on. Perhaps you already covered this in previous episodes, so feel free to point me in the right direction. Thank you in advance, and keep up the great BSing. So, moderate this. So, Brett, what kind of prep do you do for your convention games?
So, what I started doing, is I take a concept that I have and I run it off book. If I get a chance to run off book at a gaming convention, when I ran Iron Shoes, I ran that off book at Origins, not this year but last year. And tried it just to see how it would go, and went, wow, it went really well. However, I thought it would be like a 2.5 to 3 hour thing. We busted through it like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Like, okay, needs more meat. Then I took all the notes, the mental notes I had, wrote down a bunch of bullet points, came back and retooled it. I ran it again for some friends of mine, ran it again. So basically what I did was I just ran it multiple times. So now when I run it, I could easily fill anything from a 2 to 4 hour slot. I could probably stretch it to 6, but it's a 2 to 4 hour game max. It starts off with like, hey, here's a really good idea. I have a beginning, some middle stuff, and the big thing at the end, and I just kind of throw it up there and see how it goes. I do my best to try to do that before the con itself, so that I've run the adventure at least once, so that I have a flow in my mind. So when I go there and say, hey, last group went from A, B, C, D, all the way to Q, great. And if somebody else comes in and goes A, B, F, Q, Z, all right, I understand the flow of the adventure well enough that I can cut and paste and move and groove things around to make it function. So that's my main thing, is to run it beforehand. Does that make sense, Sean?
It does. So for me, prepping my convention game, I will usually run something that's out there. So I've always spoke about Forget About It, or even the Star Wars game that I ran one year, FFG, which went from 4 hours to 2 hours because Sean submitted it incorrectly. So the prepping for the game is making sure I have all the handouts. I have table tents. I have all my dice. I have pens and paper. I have extra dice. I have anything for the game, the players in the game to reference, printed out. So it's a lot of printing off all that stuff, filing that away, reading the adventure, or making notes. So if it's one that I've made up, getting in Google Docs, writing the intro. So typically, if I'm running a Star Wars game, I'm going to write an opening crawl. I'm going to set the scene, probably just brief notes, jotting them down. If I need to read them verbatim so that they have a good idea of what it looks like, then I'll type that out. And it'll be a bit of a flow as it goes. And then it's probably stats. So if it's Star Wars, I usually use the cards for creatures and NPCs. The cards that they have, the card decks are really awesome to use because they have all their stats on them. So they don't really have like a quote-unquote monster manual. So those cards come in pretty handy. If I have the documentation that I'm using for Forget About It, I'll come up with different encounters and put those and interject them. So that's how I prep. Brett, do you play test or just pull the ideas together? You kind of hinted at it already.
Yeah, pretty much. I pull the idea and then I try to play test it where I can. I have, and I probably will again in the future, saying, hey, this is a really good idea. I don't have time to play test it. I'll go to the con and make it happen. I can usually take an adventure and stretch it if I know I'm like, hey, what I will do, I should say, is I do my best to pick the shorter time period for something that I've never run before, because I have, in my shorter experience running con games, and other men and women have run many, many more con games than me. But for me, if I'm like, I could go 2 hours or 4 hours, well, I've only run it once, and it ran really, really fast, so I'll go with a 2-hour slot. Worst thing is I might run a little bit over or do a couple, GM controls all time and space and hop things along a little bit faster. I would rather do that than have a 4-hour slot and go, wow, it's 2.5 hours in and we're done. I have to either make up a whole bunch of shit for 2 hours or tell everybody I'm sorry, we're done. Now, some people are like, well, too bad, you bust through, whatever. But to Corey's point from before, I like to give you your money's worth. I want to make sure that I fill up as much of that time as I can. So I try my best to, like I said, if I don't have a chance to prep it God, that was a long answer, which is usual for me. But anyway, I try to go with a smaller time frame. It's easier for me to shorten it than to lengthen it.
So I have wanted to play test my stuff, but I typically don't. So I've run Savage Worlds Ghostbusters, I've run Forget About It, I've run Star Wars FFG version, the Force 5 from Alderaan.
Mm-hmm.
Those I've never play tested, and I think I want to.
But you've run them at cons enough.
Well,
now.
Forget About It. I have. Yeah. Now, if I run the same scenarios, then I could say, well, I've run them at cons, and I've. Then it goes to his next question, which is, do you run the same event multiple times over multiple cons to get better each time? So the answer to that is yes, obviously, because then I can go, oh, I know how this is going to flow to some degree. I'm going to throw them some of the same problems. They may come up with different solutions, but I'll know how to tackle that when it happens. I think part of me personally not running a play test, one, I run out of time, so I procrastinate, and that's a problem. And two, sometimes I think by not play testing, I kind of follow the powered by the apocalypse kind of mantra, which is play to see what happens.
Oh, there you go. That makes sense.
Right. So if it's too prepped, I think, then it's going to be too heavy-handed. But if I'm like, well, here's the deal, they're going to go into this, I have a vision in my brain of how this is going to play out with the bad guys in the encounter. And then after that, I don't know.
We'll just see what happens.
We're going to see what happens.
I like running the same one a couple times. Now with Iron Shoes, I'm bored of it insofar as I don't want to run that one again right away. So at Gamehole Con, I've got a new one for an Avalon game.
Ooh.
And the other thing I've decided to do is if I liked it, I will try to run it a few times. So now that's in my bag of tricks.
Right.
So if I'm at a convention and somebody says, hey, we'd really like to play that. If I want to run an off-book game, I have it right there, ready to go. I got pre-gens. And because I do theater of the mind at conventions because I don't like lugging a lot of stuff. So when you ask about props and things, I don't like bringing a bunch of miniatures and carrying all that stuff with me. I like to show up with my books and my dice and go. So that's That's more fun for me because it's more natural to me. I don't run a lot of miniature-intensive games. If I was running Pathfinder or something that was very tactical like that, I would indeed. But what I'm running currently, I don't need that type of stuff. So I tend not to show up with that stuff.
So I am the opposite of Brett to some degree. So the Star Wars game, I will put down a map, and I will put down, because Star Wars miniatures are freaking cool. You put stormtroopers out on the the mat. It looks pretty decent. Even though it's not tactical as much as Pathfinder, right? Everything's like, well, small range or short range, medium range, and it's just range bands. So it's not, if 30 feet is short range, 60 feet is long range. It's not like that. But I think just getting those miniatures out on the table are pretty cool. It has dark side, light side points, so those are kind of important. You have to have those tokens, so there's chits that are involved. So I would.
Well, it's like a Savage Worlds thing, right? If you don't have bennies,
right?
You gotta have bennies
yeah.
and cards. You gotta have that. That's just a That's just that's just gear for the game,
right? So when I put a game together for handouts, there's pretty standard ones that may come in handy. Like, here is a letter from somebody. Here is this or that. With Savage Worlds, bennies is kind of a handout. So it's part of the game, that mechanic as a chit, but then you can also tailor it to the type of genre that you're running. So I've run Savage Worlds Weird Wars 2, so the bennies are shell casings, right? And I've also wanted to, so part of the handout piece with me in running, I have a vision of like, oh, I wish I could have all these kind of props and handouts. Again, goes back to procrastinating and not doing it all. So I get a few, and I'll incorporate those. But if I run the game again over the year, if I come across something that will fit into that game, I will probably buy it.
So, oh, yeah. So you start off with, like, you wanted some brass, so I got you some brass. So you got shell casings. And if you wanted to pick up, a Jeep, like a Jeep cap. I can't remember what the fuck they're called. The ones that guys used to drive in World War II and Korean War era. Used to see the guys driving Jeeps in all of the films with that one wool hat type of thing. But yeah, I get it. No, not a beret. No, I can't remember what it is. Like a watch cap or something. No, hat? It's not a boonie hat. I can't remember what it is.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Anyway.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
But so, for example, forget about it. I have old Matchbox cars that are circa 1967 or older, and then I have a tow truck, and then so eventually what I'll do is I'll have a set of that and a path of a road and probably some encounters that they come along.
We've been talking about getting you a steering wheel too, to hand to whoever's driving.
I want a steering. Steering wheels are not freaking cheap, ladies and gentlemen.
No, they're not.
And all I want is a.
I was looking for one to surprise you. Like, I'll find one. Like, motherfucker.
But Sean, you could just use your Wii, like use the Wii wheel that you have. From
no,
your
lame,
Nintendo
lame,
Wii,
lame,
right?
lame.
Right, lame. But yeah, all I want is a steering wheel, because whoever's driving the Cadillac in the adventure gets to hold the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Right.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So there's some thing, but again, I don't have that. What else?
Well, I'll tell you the other thing that he mentions there, Carl. When you talk about, I haven't run games at cons in a few years. You want to get back in the swing, and you don't want to run the old, well-tested, well-worn events you ran at Gen Con many years ago. Unless you don't like those events, there's no reason, in Brett's opinion, for you not to run those again, unless you don't want to.
Right.
Because if you pull that adventure out, you may well, you could easily grab the crowd of men and women like our age, go, oh my God, he's running against the Call of the Reptile God. I haven't played that in forever. He's running T1. Wow, I haven't done that in forever. Whatever that happens to be. You may get that crowd of nostalgia-prone people or other people, younger kids these days, who've never played it before and are really interested in doing it. If it's a game you know well, when I first started running games at cons, I started running a game system I knew like the back of my hand. And it was something I'd done a bunch of times. Excuse me, an encounter I'd done a bunch, which is kind of like a siege. I put people in an inn or a building or something. I just have a siege where there's bad guys and stuff, and you're stuck in this building. But the point is that if it's something you're very comfortable and familiar with, it might be a really good way to get your feet back in the pool, right? Or do both. If you're going to run two games at a con, run one of those old tried and true ones that you know like the back of your hand, and then crack out a new one and see how it goes. Just a thought.
Do you spend significant time on developing descriptions? So I don't know if Carl is talking about descriptions for the game when you submit it or descriptions in to be used within the game.
Well, for submission, I wouldn't say agonize over it, but I do take some time, draft it up a few times, write it, leave it sit, and come back at it. Because I want somebody to read that description for the game and say, wow, that sounds interesting. I want to play that. Oh, I've never played Wraith before. I want to try this thing. Oh, I've never played Middle-earth role-playing before. Old school Iron Crown. Yeah, I'll give that a shot. Boy, that encounter sounds interesting. So I want to do something like that. I try to do that anyway. I don't whether I succeed or not, I don't know. But I'm always hopeful that when I write that thing, it'll work. When it comes down to descriptions within the adventure itself, I don't write all that stuff down. It's either a bullet point thought or shit in my head. I don't really write that down.
Yeah, so I think with submitting the game, you got to have some type of description. And depending on whether you have it fully fleshed out, depends on what you write in the description. So if you've run it before, you could probably write something a little bit more robust. However, it's not uncommon where somebody... So for Cold Shadows, I may submit my game tomorrow and I don't have the scenario set up. But maybe it's it may be hey, you're playing espionage or secret agent, or the year is 1930 or 1965, and you are an agent or a member of CIA, OSS, whatever it is, blah, 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 and it's not about the guns and the action. It's about being double-crossed. So you frame up the time and kind of the feel for the game versus what is actually going to happen. But if you know that you're going to send them on an extraction mission, you could call it, an extraction mission. There's a Russian, high-level Russian diplomat that's seeking asylum. Your job is to go in there and extract them out of East Germany. Like, that simple. You don't have it fully fleshed out. You do it. Now, going into the game, it depends on the scenes. So I may have 3 or 4 specific encounters, and those I may have descriptions or at least brief notes so that if I want to reference a key point and not overlook it, I can reference that piece. But as far as like typing out a whole paragraph, it may not be necessary because I'll know what needs to be conveyed and what's going on. And as players ask questions, I'll just fill in the blanks because the answers may not be relevant, but they're going to ask anyway. So you're just going to yep, exactly. This is how it's going to look, or nope, it's right in front of you. It's not to your left or right. It's whatever. So that's descriptions.
Yeah, it's, you stay true to the premise, right?
Right.
What's the adventure for?
Right.
And make sure you stick on that. Yeah, good stuff.
Do you spend time identifying additional encounters or shortcuts for too fast and too slow groups? So this is where, like, do you plan a linear, or do you plan it like, can you bop all over the place because you're going to be in a time crunch or have much more time than you anticipated?
No, I don't plan it. If I know as I said, after playtesting it once or twice, I'm like, okay, it sounds arrogant, but I've done this long enough. And I'm like, okay, if I run it at least twice, I'm like, okay, Group A went this way, Group B went the other way. Okay, I could see other options in between because I listened to the players, listened to them talk about different things they could or couldn't have done, what they should have done. Okay, cool, good. Group C shows up and they go a totally different way. I don't care. I know enough about the campaign or that encounter itself, excuse me, that game, where if it fluxes or flows in any direction, at that point I can ad-lib it. I can work with it because it's a singular thing insofar as it's basically that encounter or just that contained event of that 4 or 6 hours or 2 hour thing. So it's easier to say, yeah, okay, you want to drive around the pond? Fine, you drive around the pond and you don't find anything there, but now you're back at the cabin. Okay, next. Doing that type of thing isn't that hard.
Yeah, mine's similar. Forget About is really awesome for that component because it's a road trip. It's a literally 4-hour road trip.
Yeah, you're in a car, you have a destination, go.
Right. What you run into during that destination depends on what I put in front of the players. So if they're dinking around and it's 3 hours in and I have 1 hour, I can pretty much gauge what I can throw in front of them during that hour. And if it's going to run too long, then I'll just keep it out, finish where it needs to be, and they may get out a half hour early. But, they're driving down the road. They don't even know what's down the road, right? So that I can literally just put anything. Oh, there's a motorcycle gang up the road.
Flat tires, motorcycle gang,
Yep.
airplane crash. You
Right.
a Zeppelin falls out. You can't do anything. It's
So
crazy.
if it's running behind, guess what? Well, they don't run into motorcycle gang.
Next time you run it, I want you to incorporate a hot air balloon accident.
Okay, that's
I want that in there.
Not quite sure why, but okay.
Well, it's just that randomness, right? Like you show up at the gas station, and the guy's like, I'm sorry, that pump's out of commission. You need to use the other pump. And the player's like, what? It's just a delay. It's a weird thing. And the guy acts weird about it. It's nothing. It's just out. He just happens to be a dick. It's those small things that get people, especially in a game like that, gets them thinking.
Oh, I'd throw all kinds of goofy shit at him. And it's not even going to blow shit up or shoot people. It's
Hot air balloon accident, man. I'm telling you.
all right. Hot air balloon.
Big
accident.
wicker basket.
All
Hot, Oh yeah, got to do it.
And then fundamentally, what do you think leads to your best events?
Everything we just said.
Take everything we just said and, put
And
it
do
together.
all that.
Do all that. Yeah, no.
Honestly, I think for me, the best events I've had have had 2 play tests. That's been, if I have that, then it's ingrained in my head, and now I can run that. Drop of a hat, I know how it's going to go. Or not, I don't know how it's going to go. I know enough about it that wherever it goes, I can help make sure that it's a good time had by all.
I got to say that if you run an event more than twice, it is going to be better, inevitably, I think. Because you're going to know it better. You're just going to feel more comfortable. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like public speaking, in my opinion. I've talked in front of some groups, and I find that if I'm using the same material or the same topic, and I talk with one group in June, the next one in July, and the one in September, I'm kind of in a groove and I know where to go, even though, and I don't read notes. Like I just get up there and I have an outline in my brain and I can just go, this is how it's going to go. And then as people ask questions, it's just you'll hit your own stride. The first time you run something, it is clunky. You almost feel like, oh man, that totally sucks. The players may think it's the greatest time of their lives, so don't beat yourself up. If you run into that self-consciousness piece of it, it'll get better over time.
But you want to have fun while you're doing it. So it's worth it to your fun to enjoy the game and really make sure that you can do the best you can to stretch. And it's like I would tell any of my martial arts students, hey, did you stretch out? Are you working out? You doing this? You doing that? No? Well, no wonder you pulled your hamstring. Hey, run the adventure if you can. Right? We don't always get a chance to, but whenever you can, run it at least once somewhere else. I go, wow, that was cool. That worked. Neat. Sometimes you tell your home gaming group, I'm going to run this at a con. Can you help me? And then what they'll do is they'll be all happy to give you all sorts of wonderful pointers about how you can make the game better. You can nod, smile, scribble in your notebook, and act like you care. But you know what you did wrong. That's fine. Or if somebody does throw a diamond at you, you pick that sucker up, stick it in your pocket, and boom, you take that next time you go along. But most gaming groups that I've worked with over the years, even guys I don't game with anymore. Hey, I want to run a thing to test because I got a con coming. I'm like, sure, let's go. Let's try it.
Yeah, I think
Cool, man.
I think that answers all of Carl's questions. Very good stuff. I hope you find it constructive, Carl. I hope that when you run your next con game, you incorporate it and feel more comfortable and nail it out. Knock it out of the park.
Kick some ass, man.
Yeah, kick some ass, man.
All right, what do we got next? Crimfan's back. He comments on player skill from a previous random encounter from Matt Cyberlick on episode 197. There's a Grand Duchy of Jeff and Greyhawk. Yeah, Sean.
There is indeed.
There is indeed. One of my favorite things to run in Greyhawk, speaking of things I've done before, is the reclaiming of Jeff, because the giants come in and start laying waste. It's a huge brawl. It's fun. Anyway. Player skill. I think the players have skills, but it really depends on match to the table. Someone who loves crunchy rules mastery isn't going to be a good match to a more theatrical OSR type table. I see what you're saying.
Yes.
One thing you guys were alluding to that I think is a key player skill is knowing how to keep player and character distinct. such as that Recon Marine always falling into being a Recon Marine regardless of character. This is, of course, quite hard because our characters are avatars of ourselves in some fashion. It comes under the staying in character, but it's more than just that, I think. What makes a good player is a great show topic. I agree with you, Crim Fan. I'm going to get that in there. I'm trying to put my brain around how to talk about it correctly instead of our usual rambly thing. He goes on to say something which I totally disagree with. I think Sean is right. Con games and one-shots. Stefan Dragonspawn pointed this out to me. I said I was feeling down about something. He goes, well, it is the year of the Kelly. And I said, that's the fucking problem. The whole world is backwards this year. Anyway, I think Sean is right, says Crim Fan. Con games and one-shots are like vacation flings. Nothing needs to be built to last. I know one reason I would be a bit more restrictive in a campaign is that I'd worry about things like setting precedents or making property rights. This depends strongly on particular players. Some will realize that some cool stunt like hitting a boar on the nose is not really good. Is not really repeatable. Not really repeatable. So when I make it, what the fuck, go for it. Ruling as a GM, I usually say, sure, go for it, make a roll, etc. But keep in mind, this may not keep working. Hit the boar on the nose. Worth giving that player advantage on that roll. But the boars will be wise to that trick. Good stuff, Crim Fan. As always. Thanks, man. Over to you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Crim Fan.
Yeah, just gloating little bastard, you. Anyway, your turn.
DM Kojo offers a request, makes a request. Hi, guys. I wanted to write in with a show suggestion. I would love to hear your take on playing characters with low ability scores. The inevitable AD&D roll 3d6.
Straight down the line.
Straight down the line method. I got a high of a 10. Yeah, we used to hate those, didn't we, Brent? I did.
Totally. Oh, yeah.
Shit can this character. This guy sucks.
This character's unplayable.
That's right.
Carry on.
I started in the old days. Oh, look at this. Rolling 3d6 down the line. Picking a class and playing it. There you go. Now on many gaming forums, I see players who are used to rolling 4d6 and dropping 1, doing point buy, etc. I have seen a lot of discussion on these forums that implies that characters with a low ability score or 2 are hopeless or are not fun to play. I disagree with this premise and have had a lot of fun playing characters with some low stats. This has been further ingrained in my gaming psyche by playing Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG, where sometimes the least likely characters survive a character funnel and become heroes that are a ton of fun to play, despite their obvious limitations. I would love to hear your take on it. Thanks, DM Kojo.
That's a damn good topic, Kojo. That goes in the hopper. That's a good one. I like that. That's in. And holy crap, talking about requests, Adam comes up. He's got a request as well. Good afternoon, Brett and Sean. I've been listening for a couple years now. I don't game much, so I game vicariously through the podcast. I enjoy your cast immensely. Thanks, man. Thank you, Adam. He goes on to say, I've always had a hard time conceptualizing planar travel and the multiverse. Many episodes ago, I don't know the episode number, Brett mentioned doing a main topic on planar travel and Sigil, the City of Doors. Any plan on that one coming to fruition? Thanks, Adam. Wow, I had forgotten about that, honestly, Adam. But that is interesting because a lot of the type of fantasy that I run, even in D&D, tends to be that kind of gritty, street level, lower powered magic. However, planar travel is interesting, and I think it's not just a D&D thing. There's other games, other systems with ethereal this or planes of elementals and so forth. I think that one's worth pulling back out. Sean, did you do any planescaping back in the day?
I have never played Planescape.
Ah, okay.
I've never played Planescape. I've never played Dark Sun. I've never played Birthright. I haven't played
Spelljammer.
No. Nope.
He said with distaste. Is that what I detect,
dude? Like, I don't mind Reese's peanut butter cups. Mm-hmm. But in my gaming, I don't mix the chocolate and the peanut butter.
Okay, all right.
No Spelljammer, man. No D&D in space.
None of that for you. But
play fucking Traveler. Play Stars
I get it.
Without Number. Like,
but you would play Sigil, I bet. Planescape.
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
Planescape, I guess I would. I don't know. I mean, how
did your characters ever do the whole plane hopping thing? Was that ever a thing you did?
We did end up in like the Nine Hells and all this other goofy stuff every once in a while. But I mean, that's what you do when you're 14. It's like, yeah.
I get it.
Get banished to some
Yeah.
happy hunting grounds, man. That's where we want to go. Let's go to the happy hunting grounds.
Or somebody's character. Or I do distinctly remember being a young whippersnapper, like 4th grade, desperately trying to make a character who was powerful enough to go to some realm to kill the god on its home plane, because it was the only place you could 100% kill a god, which is
Right.
shows the mentality of the gamer I was back at that time.
Yes, you do, man. Yeah.
Interesting idea, Adam. I think that one's gonna take a little extra thought, because I think it's worth it. I don't know if I know anybody who's a big Planescape dude or lady. If I could pull a Planescape gamer out of our ether and say, hey, she knows Planescape like the back of her hand, let's get her on the show. I don't know anybody who's a Planescape person. Not that it has to be Planescape focused. I'm just thinking.
I thought I did, but I don't recall who. I know there's somebody that I know that's like, oh, Planescape's awesome, man. I used to play the shit out of Planescape. But I can't remember who it is.
All right, we'll have to dig that one out too. Good Lord, all the topic ideas keep hitting.
Somebody's probably like listening, going, I play the hell out of Planescape.
Tell us that. That would be great to hear. Even if you're like, I don't want to be on the show, I don't want to talk, I'm like, that'd be great. I would just like to be able to pepper somebody with questions. That would be cool. We good, man?
Yeah, let's get to the main topic. All right, Brett.
You ready, man?
Dude, I'm always ready.
So one of the things we were talking about last time about player skill, one of our astute listeners, our multitude of astute listeners, will come in with different ideas about, hey, what makes for a good, I think Cyberlick mentioned it, and what we just heard from, let's see here, I think it was Crimfan brought it up too. Anyway, point is player skill. And there's a thing and we also had a listener, I think Chris had mentioned an old episode we did on alignment, and a couple people that anytime you bring up the A word, right, it pumps out ideas and people have very strong feelings about alignment. One of the things that I hear that is like alignment discussion adjacent is I'm just playing my character, that mantra that people will use, either for good or for ill. And there's a piece that I've struggled with certain people in my group over the years, and I think I've gotten most of the guys over this. And sometimes somebody will say, I don't think my character do that. And I'm like, well, so what? That's what you used to think, type of thing. So I want to talk about character growth. I want to talk about how a character's perspectives and all that stuff, should it change, right, as the game goes on? Or is the way you design the character at the beginning this iconic hero concept that they will never, ever change, regardless of what they encounter in the adventures themselves? So, you follow me? He said, "Look, no." He said, shaking his head. That's great. All right, so let me dive.
I don't understand a single word that came out of your mouth.
Well, that's lovely. All right, so let me take a crack at this, and we'll see if Sean catches up. Anyway, right. So when you start your character, let's use D&D. It's the big kahuna, right? So you start your character, and even like in any game, actually, they have an outlook on the world. They've got goals. They've got things they want. They have an alignment, if your system has that, and so on. That's how they start, right? You've got somebody who's a Cold War spy. They hate the pig dog Americans. They're there to overthrow. They're there to do this thing, or they're there to tear down the curtain, or whatever the hell it is they're doing. And things start to happen to the character, right? They encounter NPCs. The spy character deals with a honeypot trap. This character deals with watching corruption and the wilderness of mirrors and the craziness that happens in espionage. And at some point, the character, the world around them is showing them different viewpoints, and things are happening to them. People they trusted are telling them things like, hey, man, maybe what we're doing isn't the right thing. Maybe we shouldn't be trying to tear down the wall quite like this. Maybe we should actually be helping this KGB agent. Maybe I think we're after the same thing. You get these conflicts, and we have all this great tension that we want to bring together. And somebody at the table, not all the time, but somebody will say, well, that's not consistent with my character. I've actually heard other players tell other players, well, that doesn't make sense. Your character wouldn't do that. And my argument is, wouldn't that change at some point as as play goes on? If we're trying, I mean, granted, we're not all necessarily simulating real life, but I'm I am positive that my views on certain things, politically, socially, and other things from when I was 12 are way different now when I'm 45. They're very different. I've had a plethora of life experiences since then. I know a lot of different men and women that have had massive life-changing events. They went off, they had a kid, and they're, oh my God, never planned to be a parent, and wow, I have a parent, and their life changes on them. I've known other people that have had horrible tragedies happen to them, lost a child. They've been to war, come back. They've witnessed horrible things as a cop, or all sorts of things, and it changes your view. So I think it's interesting that I don't see Dungeon World does this with bonds and stuff, where you change them, right, as things go along. This thing happened, and my bond with Sean's character is completed, or this thing I owe him, or whatever. And I think that's a piece, and maybe I'm just reading the wrong game, so I think it's a piece that players, if we're going to be good players, it's a player skill, we should carry that with us to every game we play, honestly. I can't think of many games where I wouldn't want to have that, where you would look at your character's outlook as a malleable thing that is subject to change depending on the input that he or she receives. That's what I'm talking about.
Sounds good.
Other than just agreeing with me and ending the show. Do you do that? Do you when you attack it, or do you make, Rogar the thief, and Rogar the thief is the same greedy motherfucker he's always been since day one, even when he's level 10?
Many times. I don't think that player characters evolve like you are laying out this evening. I am open to it, and I think it's a great concept. And there's a couple reasons why I don't think it happens.
Okay, lay them on me.
One, I think we come up with a character concept, and that concept becomes that character until the character's death. Good, bad, or indifferent, whatever the reason.
So Rogar the thief is a motherfucker, steals from the party. Regardless of the fact that the party has saved his life 20 times since Sunday, doesn't matter. Little prick's going to steal from the party.
Hey, man, get on the back of the scorpion. I'll get you across the water.
It's my nature. Can't help it.
Yeah. You stung me. Well, because I'm a scorpion.
Nature.
That's right.
That's what I do.
So that's what I do. So that's one reason. Second reason is that in some campaigns, they don't advance time.
Oh.
So to think that...
strict rules of time must be kept.
That's right, Gary. So if you're running a player character and it feels like you're playing once a month, but in game time it's been 3 days, the last 3 encounters you had, or the 2 encounters you had last month, and then you go to so you're playing in June, now it's July, and you're going to play with your group. The time in game has only been 3 days. Your character, even though it's been a full month in real time, hasn't evolved years.
Yeah, how could you have oh, wow, I hadn't thought about the time piece of it.
Right, Brett.
That's a very good point, because
Brett,
the perception from the outside, that's awesome, dude.
That's why I'm here, Brett.
That's awesome.
That's why I'm here, man.
You're the Kelly indeed.
Dude.
Wow.
Fucking crushing it, ladies and gentlemen.
Boom. Because I remember, like, first edition AD&D Dragonlance. I was a big Dragonlance fan back in the day, which we've talked about before. And I remember, I have not rechecked it, but I remember in the old hardcover, which is the first AD&D book I ever bought, by the way, was Dragonlance.
Was it really?
Yeah. They had, because the alignment matters so much, lawful, good, chaos, because the gods, it really seemed to matter. And they had like a tracker, like you watched your alignment. I remember this being an important piece that everybody ignored. But it was like this thing, like you should track this, and nobody ever paid attention. I remember seeing that in other D&D style games where you tracked alignment to try to say, hey, you're behaving a certain way, therefore your alignment would change. I could even see now in D&D 5e as squishy as alignment is more theoretical than hardcore, where you could say, well, you're acting a little more chaotic than lawful, blah, blah, blah. But I think you're right. Without knowing, without the game master saying, look, you guys have been in this dungeon, or you've been dealing with this Cold War era issue, you've been dealing with the same, KGB, operatives for the last year and a half in game time. And, it's going to feel like it's been a week. It's been 2 days. Because we get together to play once a month or even once a week, and that adventure could be one day.
Right.
I mean, one real day, because, wow, we got through 3 encounters. It's the end of the day. We crash. All right, this looks like a good place to stop, guys. Let's just kill it here. We'll come back next week and pick up where we left off. You get there, and we say, hey, what happened? Yeah, we spent a day. We did this. Isn't that right, Mary? Mary's like, yeah, and I healed you all. Okay, cool, great. Tina, go up there. Mary, do that. Billy's got this. We're good. Let's go. It's day 2.
Well,
so it would be hard for, Ragnar the motherfucker thief to not be the same motherfucker thief he's always been.
Right.
Because it's just a day.
Right. Not only that, but how old do your player characters get in a campaign?
12.
Like they age 12 years?
No, I'm just joking. Like they stay like they're 12 because I
Right.
tend to game with a bunch of guys and we're a bunch of morons. Half the time we act like we're 12-year-olds.
But I don't remember the last time I ever aged my character.
It's an interesting connection because even if I like that. The other piece we could do too is that there are moments in time, even from day to day, that could be life-changing. You could have a vehicle accident, Sean. That could kind of change your opinion on certain things like that. One day, day 1 to day 2, your opinion on motor laws within the city of Madison may suddenly change drastically. That could happen, and I could see that as well. I guess so. I love the timepiece saying, "Look, longer term events happening that your character should grow and progress, and outlooks on his or her, their outlook on their life and life around them and so forth." May well change. Probably should for growth perspective. Either evolve, devolve, whatever. The other thing to keep track of is when something crazy happens. I remember in my one Avalon game, Zave's character Ulf was a 16-year-old druid, and he's a city druid, and his family's mushroom farmers. And his dad is his badass, like secret druid badass. And he's like finding out this stuff, like, damn, my dad's a badass. And something happens. There's this thing going on. Ulf doesn't fully understand it. At the end of all things, he comes back, and they have to have this ceremonial meal. It's part of something that's going on. His mother's drug him to the table. The seat where his father is gone. Everybody's eating. He's like, shouldn't we wait for Dad? That's okay, your father will be here shortly. Second course comes out, everybody's eating. He's like, where's Dad? And Mom's like, he's here with us now. He ate his dad. That was part of the process, right?
Jeez.
So he went through that, and it was this bizarre thing, and they did it. And Zave went out after that and was trying to do something. And I remember Beta looking at him going, that doesn't change your outlook at all? And Zave looked at his character sheet and said, yeah, you're right. Hang on, let me make a note. Ate my dad, gone crazy for a while. It was one of those things like, wow, something horribly weird happened to me. It was kind of like the insanity thing we talked about a while back with Call of Cthulhu. You have those moments that may well change your outlook. But you take those moments and say, that's a drastic thing. Like you went insane. You ate your dad in a bizarre druidic ritual. But I think I honestly had not thought about it, but I think you're right. Without keeping track of time and laying it out every session to the players and yourself saying, hey, it's been a month in game time since this has occurred, right? It's hard for people to justify changing, Ragnar the thief, who's a backstabbing party thief, who literally steals from the party, changing his perspective when he's only been with these jokers for a week or a day or just on some real quest he got thrust into for whatever reason. I think what you're saying there makes a lot of sense. I had not thought about that.
Well, and there's no mechanic, usually.
Yeah, so that's where the bonds piece that comes in from Dungeon World and that type of thing, where you have that piece, and that's after every, I can't remember what it is, after every session or whatever. But I think if you were to take that mechanic, and there may well be, I'm positive there's other pieces out there that either track alignment shifts or something along those lines, but it's kind of like a personality change, like, hey, after X number of personality changing events, do you want to change your outlook? I don't necessarily know how to build a mechanic. Maybe I'm positive somebody out there has a mechanic for this. I just don't know what the fuck it is. So if somebody knows this, let us know. But I get where you're going right where I was going to go too, because we could say, well, it's been a month. Roll on the, do I change my perspective on the world chart? Or, I don't know. Have you played anything other than like a Dungeon World with a bonds type of thing? Have you done anything like that?
No,
with a mechanic?
The bonds for Dungeon World are really about, it's
not the same thing. It's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head that's similar.
Right, but you get experience points.
Yes, yep, exactly.
When you complete them, so there's an incentive to kind of come together with the bond and go, yes, it's been fulfilled.
So even if you don't have a chart to say, hey, my personality has changed 5 points, if there is a gain, an inspiration point for D&D, or a Benny or something that could be gained for your character mechanically, for saying, hey, hands up, Ragnar, little prick thief, is no longer this guy. He now believes this because of these occurrences in the game. Therefore, I'm no longer, picking pockets from the party anymore. I just can't do that. After Mary's character saved my life for last time, I can't overlook this anymore. My selfish predilections are gone. I'm no longer selfish. I'm a new man. If there's a reward for that, would probably help certain players want to do that. Because if no reward, some players aren't going to do it. What's in it for me, Sean? Nothing.
It's just
okay, then.
I think there's always this mentality of positive reinforcement, and it always seems like a carrot and a stick with players, and I don't like that.
I don't like it either. I guess I'm
like, well, hey, if you want to facilitate this play, then you got to put it into the game so that there's some type of incentive.
Yeah, if there's no mechanical effect, the game itself doesn't allow for it, therefore the players aren't necessarily going to do it.
Right, which is a good point, but at the same time, it's like, God, it really sucks that every time, if I were a game designer and I was like, well, in order for my players to do what I want them to do, I have to create a mechanical rule to make that happen. While I get it and understand it, and it may help facilitate play, which is a whole other ball game, it just kind of sucks that.
That's why I think it goes to the player skill thing that we threw out we talked about last week's episode, and again earlier in the feedback again here, is it's a skill. If there is no mechanic, if there is no carrot, no stick, as a player, I want to do that.
Great. So?
I think it makes me a better player than somebody who refuses, like, nope, I'm sorry, Ragnar's a thief, and he's just a prick, and he's always going to be that until the day he dies. He's aged 50 years since we met him, still the same little prick.
Some people are like that in real life.
Oh, I know. I know.
But why would one get an incentive and one not?
No, I'm not saying you have to incentive. If there is no incentive. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying, so if somebody says, no, I'm not changing because of this.
Why is one a better player than the other?
What I'm saying is you being open to it and doing something about it. You even stating the fact that, look, even in the face of all the kindness that Mary's character has done, I still hate her. My character still hates her.
Okay.
Really? Yeah, I've looked at it, and he can't get over the fact that he thinks she stole that dagger from him all the way back. He holds a grudge, and he just can't let that one go. Okay, cool. All right, then that's cool. I think what I'm doing, I guess, is a long way around backhanded agreeing with you, is I don't believe you have to incentivize them by giving them a cookie, a Benny, an experience point, inspiration point. I don't think you should. I don't think you should have to do that. But I think it's worth it as a player, if you want to become a better player, to look at your character when someone says, wow, he's still that guy. She still always gives everyone the benefit of the doubt. Everyone you've given the benefit of the doubt to has killed you. Everyone that, your thief continues to do this horrible thing. You're like, well, that's, that is who they are. And I've thought about it. And if your only thing is, I'm sorry, I'm just playing my character with no other explanation, I think that's a lazy fucking way to go about it. You should be able to, if you're a good player with skill, be able to say, you know what, I've looked at it, or good point. Maybe I should look at this differently. Let's talk about that, or something. Does that make any sense, or you don't agree with me?
It does make sense. I think it's based on each player's preference whether they want to do that or not. I think that goes back to role playing. There's some that are going to immerse themselves into role playing and taking on a character and funny voices and
That's fair.
acting out things. And then there's going to be people like, hey man, this is my character. They're going to talk in third person all the time.
This is what they do.
This is what my character does. This is.
I guess it doesn't.
I do this. I do that.
So by my saying better isn't necessarily, that's kind of hyperbole there. I think the idea would be that's what I prefer, right? I like that. That's more fun for me. It's more fun for me to see at my table. It's more fun for me to be as a player. If the other, if the other person just insists on doing it their way as much as I'm insisting on doing it my way, that's fine too, as long as, they're not wrecking something else, right? They're not a problem player because of it, type of thing.
So the other game that everybody's probably yelling at as they're listening to this that may even come close, and I'm sure there are some, but Star Wars and Dark Side points. So if you're a Jedi and you're starting to do things that are not aligned to be goody-goody, you end up accumulating dark side points. Maybe not I can't remember how Fantasy Flight Games handles it, but
Paladins can lose their paladinhood too. I mean,
that's true too. Yep, that's fair enough. But yeah. So in Saga Edition, and it's dark side points in Saga Edition, I believe, and D20 probably. I mean, once you are fully engrossed to the dark side, you sacrifice your character. Like, you turn them over to the game master. Here you go. So over time, you can.
That's because dark side is so much more powerful than the light side. It's an overpowered character.
And that may be true to some people, but nonetheless, they end up getting rousted out of the party because they've fallen into the dark side.
Well, Vampire used to do, not used to, but their humanity track in Vampire. I don't know what they're doing now, so I should say used to. If you lost enough humanity, you became a beast, and that's it. Crumple character gone.
Right. So there you go. Yeah.
That was there too. So a mechanic that forced a thing to happen.
That's kind of good and evil, right? It's like, are you doing something that's moral and aligns with what a Jedi should represent? And if it isn't, then...
And in Vampire, that was the whole concept of, beware the beast, because it could easily become you at any minute, and you're staring into the abyss. There you go. That was the idea. It was not necessarily the best mechanic, and most people just game the fuck out of it.
Right.
So they could be as close to beastie as they could get and still be playable. At least the ones I knew. I guess I see it as interesting when if nothing else, from a player's perspective, I think it's worth ourselves as players and other people when you're playing RPGs to look at it and say, even if there's no mechanic for it, there's no benefit for doing it or whatever. Look at your character and say, is the only way your character grows through experience points? Is the only way they grow through that stuff? Or can their perspectives on the world change as well? And that was kind of where I was starting to come from. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think that...
without a carrot, no one's going to do it?
Well...
Because they're just lazy? Is that what you're saying, Sean?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Sounds like what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that I don't know if there's enough reason for them to go that route other than turning things up a little bit on the...
Playing my character perspective?
Yeah, the motivation piece. Right. I mean, somebody's going to play a particular character with a particular concept, and there are many times as the character grows, many level up, even skill-based, right? Generic systems like, I get to put, I get 5 skill points. I'm going to allocate them all in these different areas. That's leveling up. In a level position or system where it's experience points, they add them up, they ding a level, they get more feats, they get more base attack bonus, they get more higher saves and stuff. All that stuff is all mechanical. Most of it can be maybe socially based if there's like a... But I don't know if it changes the outlook of the character unless it plays into the story, which is fine. And some indie games probably facilitate that quite a bit. With some of the mechanics, but
so you're sounding like you think it's a dumb idea.
I think if you're in D&D, there's
a dumb idea.
I'm going to create a kick-ass character, and they're only going to become more kick-ass as time goes on.
I want to make this as one-dimensional as possible. How can I do that?
Well,
That's the goal.
yeah.
Now, to your point, though, that if that is your brand of fun, more power to you.
Well,
But
it goes to this too, though, Brett. So there's times when we talk about a player character that says, "I wouldn't do that because," right?
Yes.
I wouldn't do that because that's not what my character would do.
Correct.
You mentioned that at at the outset of this topic.
Mm-hmm.
So say they start out, and they're like, "Yep, I would do that. That's what my character does," and then they change.
Correct.
So it works both ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but I don't know, man.
It's just too much. It's too much work for you, Sean. You're just not going to pull. It's just too much intellectual capital for you to put into your character, I guess. I'm picking on you.
I don't know if things change enough to impact, like, because you could.
I guess it depends on what da 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 da. So, do I think the same now as I did when I was 40? Yeah, pretty much. That's 5 years, right?
Sure.
And if that character in game time doesn't really exist, campaign doesn't last more than 5 years in campaign time within that world, be it Vampire, Star Wars, whatever, they probably have the same outlook. At the end of that campaign, they may well have a different outlook. I could see that. They went through and did something and found out that Darth Vader's his dad. Wow. Spoiler. Maybe he's got a slightly different outlook on Darth Vader now.
Right.
But at a certain point, I do get what you're saying. I do believe you hit on something there when it comes to time, because you can have a thing, like a sanity-shaking event we talked about. Ulf ate his dad, along with the rest of his family, so it was kind of a joint thing. Anyway, so there's horrible familial cannibalism, and then there is sanity-shaking things in Cthulhu, and those out, wow, holy fuck, crazy thing just happened to me, so therefore my world outlook changes because of that. Totally groove on that. Not everybody, but I think that's easily understood. And I think it's the subtler, I've been doing this for a long time, and I no longer think, killing Bothans is funny, so I want to do something different with my life. And I think that without a mechanical component in there and so on and so forth, I think the other piece of it is, I think it does come down to time. If it takes a while for that stuff to kick in, if your whole worldview to change overnight, that doesn't happen all the time.
No.
And it takes time for that stuff to sit in your brain, ferment for a while, get turned over like peat moss, finally brought in, figure it out, go, yeah, you know what? I don't agree with that thing I used to think that my dad taught me, so I'm going to think this other way now. That makes sense. I think in a longer campaign that has multiple arcs and approaches and so on and so forth, if there isn't a mechanic, it might be worth having the players and GM have those checkpoints where they ask each other those questions and so forth. But interesting. I like what you're saying. I mean, I'm picking on you a little bit, but obviously I agree with what you're saying. Those are good points and counterpoints back. So interesting stuff.
I think it's all going to come down to the player and whether they want to be able to do that on their own. And
oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's a player skill. Do you value it as either a player or as a game master? Do you value that thing at your table? If you do, value doesn't always have good. It's good for you one way or the other. It doesn't. And I don't believe that valuing it always means that you have to give them a cookie for it. You don't have to give them a reward in game for doing that cool thing. I think if it's a thing you value, you can bring it up and say, hey, I think it's cool that Mary did this with her character, because I just think that's really neat when people do that. Right there. Praise in front of the whole group, like, that's cool. Thank you, Mary. That was awesome. Or, hey, you know what? Sean's character has been the bastard thief, and we were talking about it, and he's like, you know what? He's still a selfish bastard. He's got this iron brain, and he just doesn't want to change. That's pretty cool. Sean at least put some thought into it. That's neat. I mean, even saying that is a way for praise to hit the table. So anyway, interesting stuff, man. I think we're done.
All right.
If other people think differently or have better thoughts or opinions on this, as always, email us, contact us, smoke signal us, whatever you got to do. Tell us where I'm wrong and how Sean is right. I'm starting to get used to it.
Die roll. All right.
I've only got one this time around. Over the Edge, there's a new edition of that coming out. Kickstarter is going to hit. I don't know when it's going to land. little link in the show notes to the Atlas Games site here, basically saying, hey, it's coming, redesigned rules, crowdfunding campaign will happen, blah, blah, blah. So you can follow the link in the show notes to the Atlas Games site. There's a, hey, pop your email in, they'll get you a notification when the Kickstarter launches. But it's a thing, that game was pretty important to a number of different people from like a game design perspective and so forth. So I just felt it was worth calling out. Sean, over to you, sir.
All right. I found this online through a stream that popped up in my news stream somewhere. 12 fantastic science fiction and fantasy novels that you should check out this July by Andrew Liptak on The Verge. So there's a few just the recommended readings. Some of you will look at it and go, I read 10 of these and already, or whatever the case is. I don't think they're new. I think they're just all over, I think, if I'm not mistaken. There might be an Asimov novel in there. Second one, custom D&D character sheets by Luke Howard are a big hit. I don't remember if I pointed this out before or not, but I came up on a different site that I just reminded me if it did. Cecilia de Anastasio on Kotaku pointed out Luke's handiwork, which are pretty cool. They're like little... I like how he does it. Yeah, it's a little booklet. I think what happens is you can get the cover, and then you can get little inserts inside, and it has the character sheet, and then it has also some tips and pointers or some rules that are specific to D&D. So,
wow,
yeah.
We
used
to do this looking at it right now. Yeah. That's fucking cool.
We used to do that shit when we were kids, like do those booklets, and they were pretty. Do our own character sheets. So yeah, there's mine. Let's see. Joe Swick brings up an article he thinks is worth reading. How not to run D&D at a con.
I saw that link and I have not read it yet.
Yeah, it's on the Raging Owlbear blog, and we'll put a link in the show notes to that one. Thanks, Joe, for sharing that. And then what else do we have? I'm trying to remember if there was anything else that we overlooked. I don't think so. I think that's pretty much about it.
I think we're good, man.
Yeah. Oh, there was another one that Joe brought up. Bring Your Own Miniatures, which is another one about basic miniatures game, aiming back to the origins of role-playing games, where each player controls a single miniature and maybe a couple of their henchmen. They collaboratively or even competitively explore an underground environment that is revealed through the course of play. Some concept sketches. Put a link in the show note to that as well. It's kind of an interesting concept. That's on Observations of the Fox blog.
Cool.
By Michael Wenman. So we'll put that in there. But otherwise, that's good stuff. This show is completed.
I think we're good, man. Next week, I wasn't positive what to talk about, and then Kojo dropped that one about 3D6 down the line, all that stuff. That one's really tempting. You know what, man? I don't know. That's a front runner. I'll tell you right now, it's a front runner for next week. We'll see what we get to.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night and good game and all.
This episode of Gaming and BS brought to you with the help from the following BSers. Andy Hall, Corey Wynn, Graham Minor, Joe Swick, Brett's biggest fan, Forrest Aguirre, Mark Anthony Benedetti, Eric Jeppesen, Sean Nicholson, Tim Jensen, Remy Bilodeau, Jason Hobbs, Wayne Humphrey, James Carpio, Pure Mongrel, Lord Tentacle, Corey Johnston, Brandon Barnes, Dan LaValle, C.W. Mellencamp, Lost Sailor, Misdirected Mark Productions, Christopher Gray, Finolf, Mirko Froelich, Eileen Barnes, Tony Sugarloaf Baker, Todd Crapper, Wiz Static, Alexander Auerbach, Neil Benson, Chris Steele, Eric the Huff Hoffman, Kyle Winter, Curtis Takahashi, Mark Tasaka, Larry Hout, Ray Otis, Ron Bishop, Craig Huber, Xavier G, JV, John Hammersley, The Closet Gamer, John Steve, Jared Rasher, Mark Richmond, Thomas Hook, Blake Ryan, Chad Gleeman, Sky, Roger Braslett, Evan Harrison Cass, Craig, Howard Bishop, Jim Fitzpatrick, Peter Skanes, The Knights of the Night Crew, Josh Wallace, Corey Welch, Eli Kurtz, Patiri Tertianen, Edwin Nagy, Bruce Cunnington, Aaron Coleman, Tim Short, Stefan Dragonspawn, Ao Negus, Rolford Guild, Gordon Cranford, Eric Salzwedel, George Sedgwick, Kevin Lovecraft, Matt Seiberlich, Jack Neller, Robert Nemeth, Eric Bontz, Pladian, Ron Blessing, and Brian Kurtz. For ways to support the show, head over to gamingandbs.com/support-us. Thanks, BSers!
This has been a Litterbox Studio production.